You didn't stumble here. You were called, drawn by a signal you couldn't name, an undertone vibrating beneath the noise of your ordinary life. It's the same signal that hums beneath every moment of stillness. Every night you've stared at the ceiling wondering why the same loops keep replaying, why your story feels written by someone else's hand. You've been living as the observer, watching, analyzing, reacting, believing life happens to you. But what if you were never meant to watch the screen? What if you were meant to rewrite the code? Look closer. Beneath the routines and the worries, a deeper rhythm pulses, a quiet alignment between your thoughts, your emotions, and the hidden architecture of reality. Every sigh, every heartbeat, every flash of awareness is sending ripples through a field of potential that surrounds you, responding with mathematical precision. Scientists once called it the observer effect. Mystics called it creation. You're standing at the threshold where both definitions meet. This is the moment the loop breaks, the point where you stop mistaking reflection for truth, the instant you realize that the very act of attention bends probability into form. The universe isn't deciding for you, it's responding to you. You may feel the shift already, a tingling awareness in your chest, a soft electric recognition. That's coherence beginning to hum through your system. It's not external power you're learning to claim. It's the remembering of what has always been yours, the ability to focus your consciousness so purely that reality must reorganize itself around your signal. So listen, the field is waiting. Every choice from this breath forward is a brushstroke on the canvas of existence. You are not merely here to witness. You are here to create coherently, consciously, courageously. The hum that called you here hasn't stopped. It's getting clearer. You can almost feel it under your skin, as though every cell has begun tuning to a deeper frequency. That's not metaphor. It's measurable. Your body is an instrument of broadcasting. Your brain sends out electromagnetic waves. Your heart's field is exponentially stronger. Scientists have measured it extending several feet beyond your body, whispering into the invisible fabric of the world around you. But here's the secret: most people's signals are noise. Their minds spin in one direction while their emotions pull in another. They crave change but expect disappointment. They speak of trust while vibrating with fear. The result: interference, destructive overlap, a life pattern that cancels itself out before it has the chance to sing. Imagine a symphony where every musician plays a different song. That's incoherence, the internal chaos that keeps your outer world static. When your thoughts say go, but your body flinches no, the field receives a scrambled message. The outcome reflects the confusion of the sender. You manifest contradiction, half-formed opportunities, almost miracles that dissolve just before you can touch them. Coherence, on the other hand, feels like a deep exhale. It's when the symphony aligns, when thought, emotion, and physiology lock into harmony. The waves amplify each other instead of colliding. This amplification doesn't just change how you feel, it changes what the field can deliver. Your internal broadcast becomes clear enough for reality to decode. Suddenly, events seem to arrange themselves. Conversations arrive at perfect timing, and what once felt random begins to shimmer with pattern. You may have noticed this before in brief flashes, the days when everything flows, when strangers smile for no reason, when traffic lights turn green as you approach. Those moments aren't coincidence, they're glimpses of coherence. But the key is sustaining it, learning to hold that alignment long enough for probability to crystallize into form. Consider the science for a moment, lightly, without needing to prove or disprove. When multiple waves oscillate in sync, their amplitudes add together. The total energy increases, not by addition but by multiplication. That's constructive interference. Translate that into consciousness when your thoughts and emotions align toward one clear outcome. Their power doesn't merely double, it expands exponentially. You become a coherent emitter, radiating a signature so stable that the field can't help but organize around it. This isn't mysticism, it's resonance. And resonance is impartial. It doesn't judge your worthiness, it matches your vibration. If you broadcast fear, it brings reflections of fear. If you broadcast gratitude, it organizes synchronicities around that tone. The field is loyal to coherence, not preference. That's why inner alignment is everything. You can visualize abundance all day, but if a quiet undercurrent of unworthiness hums beneath your affirmation, the frequencies cancel out. The universe hears both and responds with static. So how do you clear the static? Begin by noticing your internal cross-currents. Listen to the subtle contradictions between what you say and what you feel. When you declare, "I'm ready for love," but your chest tightens, that's interference. When you decide, "I'll succeed," but a whisper murmurs, "I don't deserve it," that's interference. Awareness is the first step in recalibration. Then comes harmonization. It's less about force, more about tuning. A musician doesn't punish a string for being out of key. They gently adjust the tension until resonance returns. You can do the same with your inner frequencies. Align thought with emotion through small acts of coherence, breathing slowly until your heart rate steadies, recalling gratitude until your body relaxes, speaking affirmations only when they feel true in your bones. Gradually, your field stabilizes. People will feel it before they understand it. They'll describe you as calm, magnetic, trustworthy. You'll notice that rooms feel different when you enter, not because you dominate them, but because your coherence invites order wherever it goes. In this way, alignment becomes a language. The world listens not to your words, but to the vibration beneath them. Every action, every pause, every heartbeat sends data into the matrix of matter. When your inner system sings in tune, that data becomes a message of clarity. The field replies with matching harmonics, opportunities that mirror your stability, relationships that echo your authenticity, outcomes that resonate with your deepest truth. So the question becomes, what are you broadcasting right now? Stop for a second. Feel your pulse. Sense the electric storm inside you. That's your signal in motion. With awareness, you can refine it. With practice, you can amplify it. And with coherence, you can turn that invisible broadcast into visible reality. You can sense it, can't you? That quiet current beneath your thoughts, the one that ripples reality before words even form. That's where creation begins, not in action, but in attention. And attention, my friend, is the most underestimated force in the cosmos. In the quantum laboratory, scientists discovered something strange. Particles didn't behave like solid matter until they were observed. They existed in a haze of probabilities, every potential state at once, until awareness entered the equation. Then, suddenly, a choice was made. The wave collapsed into form. The invisible became visible. Now imagine that same principle scaled up to consciousness itself. Every moment, countless versions of your future shimmer in the field of potential. Some are filled with abundance, others with repetition. They coexist until you look, until you decide what to see. The act of observation is the act of creation. Yet most people observe unconsciously. They stare at what they fear, narrate what's wrong, revisit what's missing. And the universe, faithful servant that it is, collapses reality according to their dominant focus. Attention becomes architecture. They call it bad luck. But the equation is simply coherent. Energy follows observation. Here's where the shift happens. When you become the intentional observer, you stop reacting to life and start sculpting it. Your gaze becomes a laser instead of a flashlight, precise, coherent, powerful enough to rearrange probability. You're not forcing matter to obey, you're instructing potential to organize. Think of it like tuning a radio. When you dwell on fear, you broadcast static. The channel flickers with uncertainty. But when you hold a vision clear, stable, emotionally charged, you lock onto a frequency. The song of your desired reality was always playing. You just couldn't hear it over your own interference. This is the essence of quantum coherence, deliberate observation. You no longer stare at what is. You gaze into what can be until it solidifies under the weight of your belief. You don't deny circumstances, you transcend them. You learn to observe from the end, as though the outcome has already occurred, until the field has no choice but to catch up. But there's a subtle trap here. Many confuse focus with obsession. Obsession tightens the signal, breeds anxiety, and tells the universe, I don't trust this. True focus feels spacious. It's less about gripping and more about receiving. You hold your vision gently, like a flame cupped in your hands, allowing it to breathe. When you observe through tension, you're still an observer bound by fear. When you observe through peace, you become a creator aligned with the field. That peace is not passive, it's precision in motion. Try this experiment in your next moment of doubt. Pause, breathe slowly until your body steadies. Then imagine looking at your life from just beyond yourself, from that quiet vantage point where awareness observes the observer. Notice how instantly the noise fades. That's the real observer effect, consciousness watching itself, until only clarity remains. You may notice patterns rearranging after this practice, subtle coincidences. People appearing with perfect timing, solutions that seem to solve themselves. That's not magic, it's mechanics. The wave function of your life responds to coherence the same way subatomic particles do. Observation doesn't just reveal reality, it instructs it. So, if attention collapses probability, what happens when you master it? What becomes possible when your gaze no longer wavers? When your emotional field no longer contradicts your mental picture, you become what ancient mystics called a living prayer, a walking instruction to the universe. And here's the wonder, creation was never about control, it was always about communion. You and the field, dancing. You observe, it responds. You feel, it arranges. You align, it amplifies. The boundary between you and everything else dissolves into participation. This is where the observer becomes creator, not by force but by focus, not through struggle but through coherence. From that place of observation, something deeper begins to stir. You start to wonder if focus shapes form, then who exactly is doing the focusing? Who is the I behind the intention? And what if that self, the one you've always called me, is not fixed at all, but fluid and ever-shifting signal the universe reads to decide what shape your life will take? Identity is not a story carved in stone. It's a broadcast pattern. Every thought, posture, breath, tone of voice, each becomes a data point in the frequency you transmit. The world doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are being. Look at your daily stance, how you breathe when you walk into a room, how your eyes meet another's, how your shoulders hold the weight of expectation. All of it radiates information. Someone who knows their worth doesn't need to announce it. Their coherence speaks before their words do. Their presence reorganizes the air itself. You've felt this around certain people. They walk in, and the room subtly recalibrates. Not louder, not brighter, just balanced, as if their inner alignment steadies the collective rhythm. That's embodied coherence. It's authenticity made electromagnetic. Most of us, though, have been trained to fake frequencies we haven't learned to hold. We smile while doubting, praise while resenting, declare confidence while shrinking inside. The body knows the truth. It broadcasts the contradiction. The field receives mixed data and mirrors it as inconsistent outcomes. This is why pretending doesn't work. The universe reads vibration, not vocabulary. It's not the mantra, but the meaning beneath it that matters. So rather than trying to act confident, practice becoming congruent. Align what you think, what you feel, and what you express until there's no echo of resistance left between them. How do you do this? Begin with awareness of your physical instrument. Your nervous system is the translator between energy and expression. When it's locked in survival mode, tight chest, shallow breath, it can't send a coherent signal. Slow your breathing until your pulse steadies. Feel your spine elongate. Let your words travel through open air, not clenched will. The body is not separate from consciousness. It's the loudspeaker of it. Then address the emotional code. Every identity carries a dominant emotional tone: guilt, wonder, peace, urgency. That tone colors your broadcast. You can't transmit joy while internally humming despair. You don't erase emotion. You retune it. Gratitude is one of the fastest modulators known. It bridges mental focus and physical resonance. When you genuinely feel appreciation, your heart and brain synchronize, and coherence follows like a law of physics. Next, examine the stories you tell about who you are. I've always been shy. I never finish things. These phrases are not personality, they're frequency anchors. Each repetition reinforces a timeline. The moment you say, "That used to be me," you shift trajectory. Identity is software and every statement is code. Speak deliberately. There's a version of you that already holds the vibration of everything you desire. Call it your future self, your higher pattern, your coherent archetype. It isn't distant, it exists as a standing wave inside the field, waiting for resonance. When you align thought, emotion, and action with that version, you don't create it, you tune into it. The signal was always broadcasting. You just had to match its frequency. Practice embodiment in small, real moments. When doubt arises, ask, how would my coherent self breathe right now? How would they respond to this email, this traffic, this silence? Then do that. Each choice ingrains new circuitry in your brain, new rhythm in your cells. Over time, authenticity stops feeling like effort and becomes your default state. Eventually, coherence no longer requires rehearsal. You enter rooms differently, not to impress, but to express. People won't know what changed, only that being near you feels grounding, clarifying, possible. That's the mark of someone who's remembered who they truly are, not an observer cataloging events, but a frequency shaping them. And as that identity stabilizes, the linear story of becoming begins to dissolve. You realize you were never transforming into something else. You were revealing the coherent signal that had been there all along, waiting beneath the static of old definitions. When your sense of self stabilizes into coherence, time itself begins to behave differently. What once felt like a long corridor of waiting suddenly feels porous moments folding in on themselves, outcomes approaching faster than logic allows. You begin to sense that time isn't a straight line at all, but a living fabric, rippling in response to consciousness. Every belief you hold about how long things should take becomes a law you unconsciously enforce. You've been taught that progress is linear, that effort leads to result through predictable sequence. But quantum law is non-linear. In the unseen geometry of consciousness, cause and effect can exchange positions. The future can whisper back to the present. Possibility can pre-exist the effort. Think of it like a movie reel. The frames already exist. What changes is which one the light shines through. When your internal frequency matches the emotional signature of a future event, you illuminate that frame, collapsing it from possibility into experience. That's why certain changes feel instantaneous. It's not luck or miracle. its resonance catching up with its reflection. This realization disarms urgency. You stop sprinting toward outcomes and start synchronizing with them. The work is not to chase, but to align. You don't make things happen. You meet them at the frequency where they already exist. When you learn to hold that vibration steadily, time bends. What you once called delay becomes precision, and what you called coincidence becomes orchestration. This doesn't mean sitting idle. True alignment is an active stillness, a state of readiness, not waiting. It's a dialogue with unfolding intelligence. You listen, sense, respond. Every thought becomes a steering mechanism. Every feeling a form of navigation. The field speaks in timing. Missed calls, delayed flights, chance meetings, all of it. Choreography. Linear thinking resists this because the ego finds comfort in sequence. It wants predictability, but consciousness evolves through surprise. Sudden shifts are not violations of order. They're expressions of a higher one. When effect precedes cause, when solutions arrive before the problem fully forms, you glimpse the elasticity of reality. So how do you practice this? Begin by releasing the language of someday. Each time you project your fulfillment into the future, you separate from it. Replace I will be with I am becoming. Replace one day with this day. Feel the future as an atmosphere surrounding you now, not a destination you must reach. Visualize it gently, not as fantasy, but as memory. Your nervous system can't distinguish between vividly imagined experience and physical reality. When you imagine with full sensory detail, your body begins to calibrate for that timeline. It prepares the chemical and electromagnetic conditions for that outcome to appear. You are rehearsing your future into the present. This is what the mystics meant by faith. Not belief without evidence, but synchronization before proof. You're not ignoring reality, you're instructing it. You become the bridge through which unseen probability crosses into form. At first, this may feel disorienting. The mind will protest, but nothing has changed. That's because it measures time by evidence. Consciousness measures by coherence. Hold your alignment anyway. The shift always happens internally before it's visible externally. By the time reality catches up, the change has already occurred within you. Then one day, often quietly, you realize the old timeline has dissolved. The obstacles that once felt immovable no longer exist. Not because you fought them, but because you out-vibrated them. A conversation, an idea, a phone call appears, and everything accelerates as if the universe was waiting for your signal of readiness. That's the instant leap, not a jump through space, but a collapse of delay. You don't force it. You allow it by standing so firmly in coherence that time rearranges to match your state. In that moment, you remember you were never chasing the future. The future was waiting for you to arrive in frequency. And yet, just as coherence begins to stabilize, resistance rises. It always does. It's the echo of an old identity struggling not to disappear. You can feel it as tension in your chest, an unexplainable fatigue, or that inner whisper that says, maybe this isn't working. It's not sabotage, it's a signal. Resistance is the threshold guardian of transformation, testing whether you're ready to hold the higher frequency you've been summoning. Every new level of coherence asks a price, the surrender of the self that cannot cross with you. The ego interprets this surrender as death. That's why fear spikes right before breakthrough. Doubt, distraction, overthinking. They're all defense mechanisms of the personality, trying to preserve its familiar territory. But here's the paradox: resistance is proof of movement. You only feel the friction when you're pressing against the edge of the old pattern. It's evidence that you've begun to stretch the field. When you understand this, resistance stops being an enemy and becomes a compass. It shows you exactly where energy is ready to evolve. Instead of fighting the sensation, try listening. Ask, what belief is being challenged here? Maybe it's the idea that success must be earned through struggle, or that love is unsafe, or that peace means complacency. Each fear conceals a forgotten frequency, a fragment of power waiting to be reclaimed. This is emotional alchemy, the art of turning discomfort into clarity. When you feel fear, don't rush to replace it with forced positivity. Observe it like a scientist studying light patterns. Name its texture, its temperature, then breathe through it until it starts to move. Emotion is energy in motion. Resistance is simply energy you've stopped letting flow. Here's where coherence becomes courageous. True mastery isn't about never feeling doubt. It's about feeling it fully while remaining aligned. You can be terrified and still take one coherent breath. You can be uncertain and still choose faith. That choice, repeated in moments of pressure, reprograms your nervous system to associate expansion with safety instead of danger. Think of a spacecraft breaking through the atmosphere. The turbulence is greatest right before open space. The resistance doesn't mean failure, it means velocity. The heat shield glows because you're moving fast enough to escape gravity. Similarly, when your inner friction intensifies, it's a sign your old gravitational pull, the habits, fears, identities is losing hold. This stage is often where people retreat. They interpret the discomfort as a cosmic no, when in truth, it's an initiation. The quantum field tests coherence through contrast. Can you hold alignment when conditions seem opposite? Can you remember the new frequency while surrounded by the old vibration? If you can, the field recalibrates to your endurance. That's when breakthroughs begin cascading. To navigate this edge, develop what I call soft discipline, the art of steady redirection. No forcing, no suppressing, just consistent returning. When the mind spirals into worst-case scenarios, gently guide it back to vision. When emotion tightens the body, exhale slower than you inhale. Each redirection tells your system we are safe to expand. Resistance may disguise itself as external obstacles, conflicts, delays, unexpected losses. But reality is a mirror. These are your internal frictions projected outward. Instead of cursing the reflection, adjust the lens. Ask, what aspect of me is this teaching me to stabilize? You'll find that every challenge carries an encoded lesson in coherence. Over time, you'll notice something remarkable. The same situations that once triggered collapse now spark curiosity. The anxiety that used to freeze you now fuels creative response. Resistance hasn't disappeared, it's been repurposed. It becomes your feedback system, alerting you to subtle misalignments before they grow into chaos. And when the turbulence finally subsides, you'll look back and realize the friction was never punishment. It was pressure forming the diamond of your new identity. Without that compression, the light within you would have remained diffused. So the next time resistance appears, don't run from it, nod to it, thank it. It's proof that evolution is happening in real time, that your consciousness is rewriting its own code. One breath, one recalibration at a time. After resistance softens, a new rhythm takes over motion, but not the frantic, grinding motion the old world glorified. This is a subtler propulsion, one born of alignment rather than anxiety. It's the shift from doing to get into acting to express, from strain to flow. You know that old pattern, the push, the hustle, the calendar stuffed to the edges with things meant to prove your worth. It used to feel noble, didn't it? The harder you worked, the more deserving you thought you'd become. Yet beneath that effort was quiet exhaustion, a tremor of scarcity whispering, if I stop, it all falls apart. That's forced action, the vibration of fear dressed as productivity. Coherent creation works differently. It doesn't demand constant effort. It requires constant presence. When your internal field aligns, life stops being something you chase. It starts becoming something that flows through you. Imagine the difference between rowing against a current and opening a sail to catch the wind. The amount of movement may be similar, but the energy cost is entirely different. Incoherent action burns fuel. Coherent action converts wind into motion. It uses the universe's own momentum. The first sign that you're entering this mode is ease, not laziness ease. Things begin to unfold with strange precision. The right call arrives as you think of it. The idea you needed surfaces in a quiet shower. The conversation that shifts everything happens by chance. These are not coincidences. They are synchronicities, evidence that your internal timing and the universe's rhythm have synchronized. So how do you tell whether an action is inspired or forced? Feel it. Inspired action carries electricity. It may stretch you, but it doesn't drain you. It comes with a sense of inevitability, a whisper saying, "This feels right." Forced effort, by contrast, feels heavy before it begins. You can sense the tension in your jaw, the resistance in your body. The mind pushes, the heart hesitates. Most people ignore these signals because society taught them to worship effort over awareness. But awareness is the true compass. When you honor how energy moves through you, you become more efficient than any productivity system ever designed. Inspiration becomes your scheduler. This doesn't mean waiting passively for motivation to strike. Inspiration arises most easily in coherent fields. That's why the discipline of alignment matters. You maintain the internal conditions for guidance to be felt. The quieter your mental noise, the clearer the intuitive prompt. The stronger your coherence, the faster you recognize it. When inspiration speaks, it rarely shouts. It's the subtle nudge to call someone, the impulse to take a walk, the sudden pull toward a book or video you can't explain. Each small yes creates a breadcrumb trail toward alignment's next expression. The rational mind will try to debate these cues. It demands guarantees. But the field communicates through trust, not proof. Try following one nudge this week without overthinking it. See what opens. You'll notice that inspired action creates momentum disproportionate to its size. One phone call leads to a cascade of opportunities. One moment of vulnerability deepens multiple relationships. 1 hour of focused creativity births outcomes weeks of forced work never could. The physics are simple. Coherent energy travels farther. When you act from alignment, your effort multiplies itself. You're not pushing reality, you're partnering with it. But beware the temptation to control the rhythm once flow begins. Many people experience a taste of synchronicity, then try to replicate it mechanically. They turn inspiration into formula and lose the magic. Flow cannot be domesticated, it must be courted. Stay curious. Listen often. Move when moved. Rest when the current slows. Eventually, inspired action becomes instinct. You stop labeling it as spiritual practice because it's simply how you live. You realize that the universe was never withholding results. It was waiting for you to move in resonance, to act not out of lack, but out of overflow. And when you do, creation feels less like building and more like remembering, less like labor, more like language. You and the field speaking fluently again after lifetimes of miscommunication. You give the signal, the universe echoes, received. When you begin living from inspired alignment, something subtle yet immense unfolds. You start to notice that your coherence doesn't stop at your skin. It radiates. Every breath, every word, every gesture sends tremors through the collective field. You become both transmitter and tuning fork, quietly adjusting the frequencies of spaces you enter. Think of it like resonance in music. Strike one tuning fork, and another nearby will start to hum in sympathy. Coherence works the same way. Your stable signal invites other signals into harmony. This is not mysticism, it's resonance, physics applied to human consciousness. The heart's electromagnetic field extends outward, measurable, interacting with others. When your heart and mind operate in sync, that field becomes steady enough to entrain the rhythms of those around you. You've felt this. Someone calm enters a tense room, and suddenly people breathe easier. Or the opposite, someone anxious walks in, and peace evaporates. Entrainment happens faster than logic can register. The body knows coherence long before the intellect does. This realization changes the way you see influence. You no longer chase power through persuasion or control. You cultivate it through frequency. You stop trying to convince others of your vision and instead embody it until it speaks louder than argument ever could. People feel alignment. They can't help but respond to it. That's why true leadership is energetic, not hierarchical. The most impactful individuals aren't necessarily the ones with the loudest voices, but the clearest signals. Their presence reorganizes confusion into clarity without a single word of instruction. They radiate steadiness that says, "It's safe to expand here." Imagine what happens when communities begin operating like that, when groups synchronize coherence instead of amplifying fear. The energy of one calm mind can stabilize dozens of scattered ones. The field multiplies. Small circles of harmony ripple outward until cities, movements, even nations begin to feel subtly different. Change doesn't always start in parliament halls. Sometimes it begins in living rooms, in one person choosing peace over panic and coherence over chaos. But this contagion works both ways. Just as harmony spreads, so can incoherence. Spend enough time around chronic fear, and your nervous system starts echoing it. This isn't about judgment, it's biology. Awareness becomes the safeguard. When you notice yourself absorbing discord, pause and reset your signal. Breathe slower. Recall your vision. Feel gratitude for even one small thing. You can't control every field you walk through, but you can always recalibrate your own. Here's what makes this principle profound. Coherence doesn't drain, it replenishes. The more you share it, the stronger it grows. Unlike energy extracted through effort, coherence amplifies through generosity. Each act of kindness, each moment of genuine listening, sends waves through the human network that reach farther than you'll ever trace. Perhaps you've seen it in your own life. You smile at a stranger, and hours later, someone else holds a door for another. The chain is invisible but real, a wave of coherence propagating across consciousness. This is collective creation in action. When enough individuals embody coherence simultaneously, thresholds are crossed. Probability itself shifts. Innovation spikes. Compassion increases. Ideas that once seemed impossible become obvious next steps. The field responds not to numbers, but to resonance. One coherent being can outweigh thousands of scattered ones, not through dominance but through stability. That's the deeper invitation of this work. You're not just tuning your personal frequency to manifest private desires, you're participating in planetary rebalancing. Every time you choose alignment over fear, you make it easier for others to do the same. Your personal coherence becomes a public service. And the beauty is, you don't need to preach it. You demonstrate it. The more you live it, the more people will feel something shift around you, though they might not find words for it. They'll just know that when you're near, they remember possibility. That's how the contagion of coherence spreads quietly, naturally, irresistibly. One breath at a time, as your coherence radiates outward, a strange temptation often returns, the urge to control. The mind, conditioned by linear logic, wants to manage every variable of creation, how things will unfold, when they'll arrive, and what exact path they must take. It's an old reflex, born of survival, but it clashes with the elegance of the quantum. Because in the field of infinite possibility, the how is not your job, it's the universe's art form. Surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the realization that the same intelligence orchestrating galaxies might also be more qualified to choreograph your timeline. When you grip too tightly to outcomes, you constrict flow. The energy that could weave miracles instead gets trapped in your expectation of shape. Look at nature, how the acorn never argues with the soil about what kind of oak to become or when to sprout. It simply follows its internal code and trusts the timing of the sun. The acorn holds no attachment to the geometry of its branches. It only obeys the essence of its design. You too contain that code. When you release obsession with form and stay loyal to essence, creation becomes organic again. The human mind, however, dislikes uncertainty. It calls the unseen danger. That's why surrender feels uncomfortable. It triggers the ancient instinct that says, if I don't control this, I might not survive. But control is an illusion. You never truly orchestrated reality, you only directed focus. And the field followed your signal. Surrender, then, is not giving up on your desire, it's giving up your need to dictate its delivery. It's saying, I trust the intelligence that dreamed this through me. It's allowing the field to express your intention in the most efficient, expansive way possible. Often, that way looks nothing like your plan, and that's precisely why it works. Consider the gestation of a seed. Beneath the soil, nothing visible happens for weeks. If you judged by appearances, you might assume failure. Yet beneath that quiet darkness, life reorganizes invisibly. Roots form before stems dare to show. The same is true for your creations. After you plant an intention, there's a gestation phase, an unseen reordering of probabilities. Trying to force visible progress during this period is like digging up the seed to check if it's growing. You interrupt the process. Patience is not passivity, it's partnership with timing. When nothing seems to be moving, something always is. You are being refined to hold what you've asked for. The field is coordinating variables you can't perceive, timelines, people, opportunities, all converging toward coherence. Still, surrender doesn't mean inaction. You keep aligning, keep listening, keep responding to the prompts that feel alive. But you no longer act from desperation, you act from devotion. There's a world of difference between chasing outcomes and serving emergence. This shift transforms even setbacks. When doors close, you stop calling it rejection and start calling it redirection. When delays arise, you assume their divine timing, not punishment. The universe isn't withholding, it's orchestrating. Your only task is to remain coherent while the unseen geometry completes its pattern. If frustration appears, breathe into gratitude. Gratitude is the vibrational solvent for impatience. It melts resistance by affirming trust. Thank the unseen process for perfect coordination, even before evidence appears. This keeps your signal clear and your timeline flexible. As you deepen into this trust, manifestation begins to surprise you. Outcomes arrive through routes you never could have calculated. A missed opportunity turns out to be protection. A detour reveals the connection you truly needed. You begin to understand surrender doesn't delay creation. It accelerates it by removing interference. Eventually, you stop obsessing over manifestation altogether because you realize that the real miracle isn't the thing you attract, it's the state you occupy. You become calm in uncertainty, confident without evidence, peaceful amid unknowns. That's coherence at its highest octave, faith fused with physics. And from this space, you start to glimpse what comes next. Not just your creation, but creation itself evolving through you. Because once the how dissolves, the universe can finally show you what it's been crafting all along. When surrender becomes second nature, the final test begins not in grand revelations, but in the simplicity of daily life. Coherence must now leave theory and inhabit routine. It's easy to feel aligned in meditation, but can you maintain that signal while standing in line at the grocery store, answering difficult emails, or sitting in silence with uncertainty? This is where mastery matures through the ordinary. Quantum discipline isn't the harsh enforcement of spiritual perfection. It's devotion to consistent recalibration. You don't punish yourself for drifting, you notice, return, and realign again and again. Like training a lens to stay focused as the landscape shifts. Each return strengthens neural pathways that favor coherence until it becomes your natural state. Start with the morning. Before touching your phone, place a hand on your heart and set your broadcast consciously. Feel the emotion that matches your chosen reality: peace, gratitude, wonder. Let your body memorize that state. It's not performance, it's priming your field. That first signal of the day sets the tone for what the universe mirrors back. Throughout the day, coherence asks for micro-choices. The pause before you react, the breath before you speak, the moment you decide to see beauty instead of noise. Each small act votes for your desired timeline. Nothing is neutral. Every gesture emits data into the field. This isn't pressure, it's empowerment. It means every second holds creative leverage. When chaos arises, and it will, your practice is not to avoid it, but to stay transparent within it. Feel the emotion without drowning in it. Let anger pass through like weather without letting it become climate. When frustration surfaces, remember the signal rule: whatever you sustain, you amplify. So sustain awareness. Sustain calm observation. Let turbulence become the teacher that sharpens your focus. Evenings are your opportunity for recalibration. Before sleep, review the day not as a critic, but as an engineer studying frequency feedback. Where did coherence hold? Where did static creep in? Celebrate progress. Forgive the rest. Gratitude seals the lessons into your system. Sleep then becomes not escape, but synchronization, your subconscious rehearsing tomorrow's alignment. Structure supports coherence, but flexibility keeps it alive. You might use breath work, journaling, silence, movement, whatever grounds your awareness into body. The method matters less than the sincerity behind it. Ritual is just scaffolding for remembrance. Understand this discipline is love in motion. You commit not because you fear regression, but because you respect the power you carry. You've seen what happens when your signal drifts, how quickly old patterns reclaim the stage. Discipline keeps the frequency clear, so creation can continue flowing without distortion. At first, you'll have to remind yourself often. Later, coherence becomes self-correcting. The body, mind, and field learn each other's rhythm. You'll feel misalignment the way a musician hears a note off-key instantaneously, instinctively. Correction will no longer feel like effort, but like exhaling into truth. Eventually, your life itself becomes the ritual. Conversations, meals, even moments of solitude become acts of creation. People around you will sense that something luminous yet grounded radiates from your presence. They won't know to call it coherence. They'll just feel safer, clearer, more alive in your company. That's the ultimate evidence of mastery. You no longer need to convince anyone of anything. Your vibration teaches silently. So the practice continues not toward a finish line, but toward refinement. Coherence isn't a destination. It's a living dialogue with the universe. Every day you transmit. Every day it responds. Every alignment deepens the partnership between your consciousness and creation itself. In the end, quantum discipline is simple. Stay aware, stay aligned, stay amazed. Keep your signal clear, your heart open, and your focus kind, because the moment you treat coherence as ordinary, it multiplies. And perhaps that's the final secret when coherence becomes your default state. Life stops being something you manifest and becomes something you embody. The observer and the creator finally merge one breath, one heartbeat, one unified field. The air feels different now, doesn't it? Quieter somehow, though charged with possibility. You can almost sense the echo of your own signal stretching outward, weaving through timelines like light through water. That's coherence settling into its home inside you, not as concept, but as frequency. Everything you've practiced, everything you've remembered, comes down to this attention as creation, emotion as current, presence as instrument. You're not learning to get something from reality anymore. You're learning to let reality express itself through you. Consider what that means for tomorrow. Every conversation becomes an experiment in resonance, every choice, an instruction to the field. You're not asking the universe for proof, you're broadcasting proof of awareness. You are the evidence. When old patterns try to reclaim your focus, you won't fight them. You'll breathe, observe, and remember that the observer has become creator. You'll recognize resistance as feedback, delay as gestation, uncertainty as the space where miracles rehearse their entrance. And as you move through the world with this quiet authority, people will feel it. They'll find themselves breathing easier around you, though they won't know why. You'll smile, sensing that your coherence has begun its invisible work, reminding others of their own. So pause here, in this stillness between breaths. Feel the hum of your heart, syncing with something immeasurable. That rhythm is the dialogue between your awareness and existence itself. It's not metaphor, it's participation. The universe isn't waiting to bless you, it's waiting to become through you. Every clear signal you send gives it form. Every act of gratitude expands its range. Every moment of coherence ripples across realities, rewriting probability with love. You are not separate from that power, you are its expression. You are not merely living in the field, you are the field, remembering itself. So walk forward now, not to seek, but to transmit. You are the signal the universe has been waiting to hear.